Good evening, fellow councillors, and welcome to our virtual full council meeting. I will ask now Chief Exec John Robinson to say prayers.
Good evening, everyone. Let us pray. Be with us, O Lord, in our deliberations for the affairs of this council. Show us what we ought to do and give us faith and courage to do it in thy name's sake. Amen.
Amen. Due to the length again of the agenda, I would ask for brevity when asking questions to the speaker. And I would also ask that you use the virtual hand when you wish to speak and a physical hand when you vote. Please keep your hand visible to allow the clerks to count the vote. Thank you. The clerks will also ask if you would keep your cameras on, everybody, and also keep your mics off. Thank you if you're doing it. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chairman. Apologies received from Councillor Wendels and Councillor Smith.
Thank you. May I just inform you that Councillor Wendels has had COVID and is not feeling too well at the moment. And Councillor Tom Smith's wife has gone into labour. Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, no apologies, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harris.
Civil President.
Councillor Harris, any apologies?
No.
Thank you. And Councillor Dawn, any apologies from the Independent?
No apologies, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item number 2, minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of February 2020. Are these a correct record? Please show. That looks unanimous. Thank you very much. Are there any against? No, thank you. I will sign them as a correct record. Thank you very much. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest by members and officers as to the party whip. Any hands? No, thank you very much. Agenda item 4, declarations of any intentions to record the minutes. Record the meeting, sorry. Any hands? No, thank you very much. Agenda item 5, communications from the chairman. I have none. And the chief exec wish to lay before the council. So chief exec, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I do just have one very positive item of correspondence to bring to council's attention this evening. This is a letter from Luke Hall, Minister for Regional Growth and Local Government, dated the 3rd of March, confirming news that many will already be aware of. And that is the offer of a town deal for Newark of up to £25 million, which is just fantastic news. If it's okay, Chairman, I just want to say a brief word of thanks to one or two colleagues and partners. First of all, to Matt Lamb and Neil Cattell, who've just done a splendid job with a range of partners in getting our submission together, very well supported by Sanjeev in terms of the financial information, and also to our own leader and to Tom Cartledge, who have been jointly chairing our Newark Towns Fund board. And they have also been extremely well supported by a real mixture of different partners. So great news that the work really in some respects is just starting now. We've got business cases to work up the detail of, but it's certainly a very positive announcement.
Thank you, Chief Exec. I do apologise, fellow councillors. I did forget to say that don't forget we're live streaming, please. Thank you. Agenda item number 6, communications which the leader of the council or any committee chairman may wish to lay before the council. Councillor Lloyd? No, thank you very much. Any committee chairman? Can't see any hands, thank you. Questions from members of the public? I'm non-notified. Agenda item 8, in accordance with the rule number 10, to receive presentation of debating of petitions, non-notified. Agenda item 8, revenue budget and council tax setting. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you very much, Chairman. The annual event, the State of the District, the presentation of our budget. The full detail is there in the report, as are the recommendations. As is often the case with budgets, and no criticism of staff, it's not always immediately obvious from the following reports what service initiatives and improvements it's delivered in year and in future years to come. Quite properly, Chairman, if I may, in the first instance, thank all those involved in preparing our budget. That's not just service colleagues, but I think it's proper this year very much to pay testament to our financial colleagues, Sanjeev and his team, and I would give them all a name call, but there's far too many. But this has been a budget year like no other for them, with the very many different grants that are passported through us and the support and the speed in which we've delivered it. Indeed, to prepare the budget and the outturn has been quite difficult for them. And so I think it's quite a feat that they've achieved that. And similarly, yet again this year, we achieved an unqualified opinion, which despite the title is good with regard to our finances. And so our commendations to them. I suppose on that point, Chairman, as it's almost the end of a sort of municipal financial year, it is proper again that we recognise and thank all of our staff colleagues, as I prefer to say, in every single service of the council for what we have been doing during the last year, and to some extent preempting the thanks that we will owe them for the coming year and possibly that after. There is a hard task coming ahead. And it's important to emphasise that is all staff colleagues. Some kind of say, well, you know, what have I done differently? Well, they have sustained the quality of our services throughout this entire pandemic situation, which with the different means of working, the different demands on them, is no mean feat whatsoever. And so every single colleague is due those thanks. But just some high level recap, if I may, Chairman. Despite an early difficulty in 1 week, we have sustained high quality waste services, cleansing and everything that comes from that team, and have been responsive to the public in a time when they probably more than usual recognise issues of cleanliness, antisocial behaviour, and are using parks more than they have done previously. We've risen to that challenge. We paid out grants to businesses and other organisations at a phenomenal speed. If I'm candid, there was one business I wanted to hunt down and kick the door down, because had they accepted their grant, I'm quite certain we'd have been #1 in the country. We were in the top percentage, not just for paying out grants, but the speed with which we did it throughout this situation. And again, I anticipate that going forward. But to give you some quantum, that's over 40 million in grants that have come through us and been passported. And it is worth recalling that we chose as a council to use our own reserves that would have been applied to other services in the first instance prior to government money coming forward, to the tune of around 8 million. That is the importance that we apply to our economy and our local businesses, recognising most are also local residents. Through our HEART team, Humanitarian Assistance Response Team, over 1,475 requests came through them from people that needed support for issues of vulnerability or other. Our public protection team had over 700 more requests than they might normally. And this is in addition to staff across all services coming together to be our ambassadors, help with the signage, the advice, with visiting premises during the various reopenings and relocking that we have experienced, particularly in our community. Our very own Palace Theatre, that should have celebrated its centenary, became essentially a food hub, and helping people in that respect, and geared up all their provision to do learning online for children that weren't at school during that time, and indeed their families. And we must also recognise the services that enable a lot of this. All the calls that have been routed through customer services and our housing customer services team, the support we've given through the council tax support grants that the government gave us, the repairs we've been responsive to within our own housing stock. We've delivered on the planning service throughout. We've supported businesses in relaxations on certain planning restrictions. We've enabled temporary changes where they were necessary. We've given the HR, the well-being support to our own colleagues. ICT totally changed it so that people could work from home, and we had the systems for broadband re-enabling that. Committee services, we better mention them, they're here listening. We think we might have been the first council in the country to have gone online, and they have sustained all of these different meetings so we can carry on the business of the council. Every service throughout our council and every colleague is testament to themselves, but certainly their commitment to our district and our residents. And I wanted to make those points prior to moving on to the budget, Chairman. Sorry if that took some time. The budget itself then represents a relatively modest increase to the council tax levy, 1.98%. Percentages in themselves don't mean much. We know other precepting authorities might talk of low percentages, but a low percent on a high amount triggers a high amount. To put it into context then, Chairman, as I did last year, I just want to put into effect what it means to people's bills. Band A, we're asking £2.30 more per annum every year. Band B, £2.69, Band C, £3.07, and then the famous Band D, which is what everything is printed on, £3.46 more per annum we are asking. Give that a little more context, Chairman. Bands A to B, 58% of our households fall into those categories. If you add in then Band C, that rises to 74%. 3/4 of our population are within those bands, and therefore the vast majority are paying less than £3.10 more to us after this request. Similarly, within those bands, there are high proportions in receipt of council tax support, and so some of these changes won't mean a significant difference to them. I think, Chairman, we should also probably recognise, therefore, with yet another relatively small increase to our council tax preset, our position as a district in any league table is improving. Now, there's 188 districts still in existence. I'm not factoring in unitaries and others throughout England. We're the 77th cheapest, so we're well into that top half now. That is some difference to many years ago. We are increasingly rising up the ranks of the less expensive, shall we say, than councils within Nottinghamshire. The difficulty we have with our bill is not just that council tax base that I explained, bands A through to C predominantly, also the number of parishes, but also the bill reflects the precepts from other authorities. As a district council, we are relatively low cost in that top half in the country, and my word are we value for money, Chairman. So, for the amount that we've previously been paying, in fact, just to give that some context and to be absolutely clear, therefore, to a Band D, our precept will be £182.03 in the forthcoming year. So I say we've been a relatively low-cost council that delivers value for money. What sort of things have we been doing? Not just COVID, but all the other services we deliver. And it's worth noting, Chairman, we have not stood still. We have continued to deliver service improvements during this year. Cleaner, Safer, Greener, people will know, is a campaign we've been running as a council. 36 fixed penalty notices and increasing. 3 joint operations with the police, specifically on antisocial behaviour, recognising the importance residents put on that. I think over 5 nights of action during different periods of the pandemic. Public space injunctions that have been more effective than they ever have been in the past. Our response to flooding, which has occurred sadly yet again this year. The Safer Streets project, improving CCTV, not just on streets, but people's own premises, target hardening them, as they call it, reducing bike theft, putting GPS into those bikes, improving personal safety, reducing theft from vehicles in those areas where it was recognised, and we did work with the Police and Crime Commissioner on this, there were the highest level of offences. Tackling graffiti better than we ever have, with a responsiveness particularly where that graffiti is offensive, and beginning to become tenure blind so that we will remove it where it happens worst and most often. Safety within our own homes. Given the difficulties of COVID, 99.77% gas compliance in our own stock, 900 repairs caught up on over the COVID, and we're back where we should be. A planning enforcement plan brought in, and we're doing more now to prosecute breaches of permissions, those without permissions, and variations where they shouldn't occur, and that is being effectively implemented. And then also in terms of being safer, all that health and well-being work that we have put out online and in different ways for our communities, with over 500 individuals and families supported and sustained throughout this circumstance. Garden waste we brought back in-house, 1,400 new customers in addition to those we already had. Grounds maintenance service back in-house, not only meaning we'll have consistency across our housing stock and different parts of the district, but now we've won over 11 contracts. So that consistency and those standards will apply across more of our district. using the opportunity of things being closed to replace playground and park equipment, which we've done in a much bigger way, bringing forward some of the capital programme. Our work and successful prosecutions on fly tipping, dog fouling penalties, hooray, more of them happening more than ever have in the past. Our work on graffiti, we've actually apprehended some of them and brought them in. They've talked in their schools, they've worked with us to remove their own offences. Our 4 green flag parks, all of those flags were retained. And crucially, on the greener elements, we have been candid in the past. It was the one we wanted to do more work on to catch up and go forward. We adopted that climate emergency plan with the target of 2035 to be carbon neutral. And people will have seen, again, we've used the opportunity of the pandemic to massively ramp up the amount of tree planting we're doing, some of those earlier phases of our planning, and increasing the amount of EV, electric charging points for vehicles. And indeed, I think we've successfully done that in car parks in Newark and Southwell quite recently. The other services, sustaining our economy as best we can, supporting those that need it. Our Civil War Centre I mentioned, but they were free. It was free to go in during certain times of the pandemic. All the resources they put online for schools, families and children. And very importantly to recognise, given the huge loss of income, hopefully those services will have come in on budget this year, which is quite a difficult thing to do. Dukery's swimming pool underway and will be open. Launching our own community lottery to support those smaller local charities that really make the difference. Successfully getting cycling funding for Thoresby Vale. Reopening our high streets, not an easy task to do, and working with all those different partners. Supporting through funding over 150, I think now, businesses to diversify and go online, to not just sustain them going through the pandemic, but in order to deliver going forward as well. Kickstart, a national scheme. We've got 50 job placements for younger people on that. So that's better than many councils I've looked at. That's brilliant news for them going forward. What was formerly known as the Robin Hood Hotel, now Newark Travelodge, will very shortly be open. The work has continued throughout. It's ready for that reopening of the economy. As the Chief Exec informed us, 25 million for the Newark's Town Investment Plan. All of our aids and adaptations for those that need them, disability facility grants, as some people call them, all delivered during a pandemic. Not just that, some of the highest satisfaction rates we've ever had on the delivery of those services. 42 energy upgrades for hard to heat homes, particularly at Fairholme Park. Our rough sleeper funding, we've got them off the streets. We've got more money. We've been supporting people that were homeless during this pandemic and doing that properly. And this one I particularly like. We had 8 apprentices, 7 of them have successfully got roles going forward. Staycation campaign in August to support those businesses as they reopened. Parking standard consultation, 3 neighbourhood plans delivered, our first ever infrastructure funding statement, and 5 asset of community value designations put in place. We've been delivering our services and improving throughout this pandemic and responding to people's priorities. And not just that, we must always recognise, and not least because they fall under my committee, the machine behind everything that occurs. I've mentioned the committee meetings and possibly being the first in the country. We think we probably were, but just going online, over 1,170 people have been watching those meetings. I suspect that's around about 1,170 more than usual. That has enabled us to reach into different communities. A new telephony system, we knew we had difficulties. Everything to work remotely. New finance and HR software put in and implemented. Website being redesigned, much more work next year, but underway. And we signed that digital declaration. Rent, taxes, rates, collected to a high proportion, but importantly, giving support to those that may have been struggling and continuing to do so. High collection rates, high empathy and support throughout. And still, in fact, probably the best time to do it. So many consultations with the public and with our tenants on their services and the way forward. Again, Chairman, a council that listens, responds and is effective. But we've asked for a small increase. Why would we do that on top of all of these excellent services? Because there's more we want to do, Chairman. And I only wish to give something of a flavour of what the budget will deliver in that respect, because much of this will go through committees and more will determine during the year. But the fly tipping action plan can now be put in place and the campaign not in Newark and Sherwood. And that we really want to see prosecuted because we have had increasing difficulties. Trialling electrification within our fleet, beginning to do that work on becoming carbon neutral. Days of action will come back again, but bigger and better than before. a dedicated team that is now more upskilled, and that's a compliment to them, with greater equipment, able to do more of the responsiveness themselves, as perhaps recently witnessed at Chatham Court, if anybody saw those videos. And they will be out in so many communities. A campaign to encourage greater responsibility on recycling, and an element of education there to again support people and increase those percentages. Trialling a new lettings standard, a pilot, but on empty properties where numbers are still too high, but within our own housing stock, to just try and reduce the amount of time it takes to relet and reduce the number of voids. Developing our own locally agreed housing standard. We've only had Decent Homes Plus. We will have one developed by tenants in Newark and Sherwood that reflects their priorities and their needs. Trees, they're all over the place. We've been planting them phenomenally during this season, November through to March. Huge amount of that engaging communities where we can. And going forward, let us be clear, those works, those litter picks, those community action, all those tree planting will be done with schools and communities wherever we can. We need to raise the pride, the education, the understanding as to why we're doing it, and make people really happy to live where they are. And hopefully in 40 years' time, when most of us aren't here, that child that planted the tree can look back at it and recognise some of the works they did. Fuel poverty, more schemes coming forward, even more prescient under that climate emergency plan. Community hub at Chatham Court, further work on the Ollerty hub, opening hopefully the care facility in Booton, the new homelessness facility here in Newark, which we attracted funding for, not just units, but advice to people in a drop-on basis. Reviewing our tenancy agreements. We have 2 more community engagement officers we brought in during the year, proving we want to go into those communities and support people. Forest Corner, delivering that master plan, tying into the Explorers Road tourism nationally. Southwell Leisure Centre, coming into our family and hopefully developing that to go forward. The improvements at the services there at Blydydd with regard to leisure as well. Civil War Centre will reopen. The Palace Theatre will at some point too as well. Developing a tourism offer for coach operators to bring people into our environment. Cycling at Thoresby, working with the YMCA to open further facilities and the beginning of their buildings of a new educational engagement block on their site. Directly targeting 200 businesses on the growth and the skills that they require to sustain and move forward. Developing the 2nd floor of the Butter Market and the Royal Exchange. Working to have the 5G forest in Newark and Sherwood Forest, and delivering that going forward. And then we mentioned the Town Investment Plan and all that falls out of that. IASTI, Technology Institute, working with the university on all the skills required in aviation, both air and space, and the different skills that we get within that. Just think what that'll do for aspiration, alongside the future plan for innovation around logistics that will be delivered on a similar site. Construction College coming forward already on new skills around gas and joinery and heritage and electrification. The cycling that will deliver within the town for the cleaner future. The Castle Gateway to secure that tourism legacy and that extra footfall that our high street will need. Repurposing 32 Soppen Street to prove to the public and to landlords what can happen when you change premises and your financial model to try and again revitalise our centres. The Heritage Action Zone, finalising the work we're doing on conservation areas. Newark Heart and the work we'll learn to deliver therefore in Southwell and other areas. What we do in Newark, we can learn to do in other parts of our district. But importantly, excitingly and happily, we're also in the top 100 for the newly announced Levelling Up Fund. And our clear intent is to target that on communities that have not been successful so far and that fall through the gap on all the other funds that have been in the past. So we will be developing schemes and delivering on them right the way across our district, not solely in Newark. And let that message be heard loud and clear. Every resident, every village, every community, the work we're doing will be sustained in that way. Junction improvements, A46 and the A614, the A1 overbridge coming forward this year, hopefully. A new supplementary planning document on developer contributions, a new one on parking standards. We again are putting in place the policies and the requirements that will deliver for the infrastructure and enhancements we need for the future. A new policy on antisocial behaviour. A complete review of CCTV, where it is, what it is, quality of it, do we need it? What can it be used to prosecute? And then again, those improvements, not just to our website, to help people access services in a different way, online rather than just solely through telephony, but to help us learn more about our services in terms of satisfaction, how people engage, how we are delivering. E-newsletters to reach people in different ways. And you'll see in the budget there are increases to our teams, and some might raise an eyebrow. Why are we investing more on legal services, on asset management and on communications? Well, we're being quite successful on prosecutions and we hope to do more. That's legal services. We have a huge premise now and increasingly use assets to stimulate our economy and want those to work for the employers that reside within them, and look at the different housing we have across our piece. That's assets. And if people don't know what we're doing, how to engage, and the various different campaigns we work with them, will never deliver the highest levels of performance that we seek to. That's communications. So from their feedback, and I can share with you, I know we shared a lot throughout the pandemic, I see a lot of the feedback that comes directly through to services. We've never seen anything like it in the past. We really have been responsive. We really do deliver high quality services, and they are increasingly better appreciated among our residents, which is excellent news for our staff colleagues that deliver them. Our next task is vaccinations. We're working very closely with the NHS on that, Chairman, and we hope to deliver those fully so that we can unlock effectively. And that building back, the council is planning to effectively work with high streets and the different businesses on that roadmap, as we have done throughout these last 11 months. We will demonstrate going forward again that not only can we rise to the challenge, we can provide the appropriate support and ensure that Newark and Sherwood, its businesses, its residents and its visitors witness the best quality services possible in order to deliver the best outcomes possible. And incidentally, Chairman, during this year, that has been an absolute cross-party imperative, and I salute every councillor here present and on this body for what they have done throughout this circumstance, that we have done this as a team and they have brilliantly represented their communities through to us. Chairman, with those comments, the recommendations are set out in the report, duly moved.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Girling.
Thank you, Chairman. I second the report and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Anyone? Can't see any hands.
Just invite comments, Chairman.
Do we have any comments?
Councillor Peacock.
Councillor Peacock.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Lloyd, for giving us a short and snappy explanation of what's been going on over the last 11 or 12 months. I'd also like to echo your thanks to our staff from top to bottom. They've been brilliant throughout the last year, probably the most challenging year that they've ever faced, that we've all ever faced, I suppose. And I can't recall an occasion when I've made a request, or requests have been made by councillors to get repairs done, or to any of that, for anybody to moan or to you know, not act in the appropriate way. They've gone. Our staff have been brilliant. They've gone the extra mile on every single occasion, and great credit to them. And great credit also needs to go to our leadership in terms of our senior management team, who have kept the wheels going. But also credit to you, David. You've led us through a difficult year, and you know, we may be on kind of opposing political parties, but I'm pleased to be able to say that you've led us through a difficult year, and with all those accomplishments that you mentioned, that has been fantastic for us. It's been fantastic for our residents, and I'll finish by saying that that I support the budget going forward, and we'll be voting for the budget. But also, just like to thank the way that we as councillors have operated. Although we've not seen each other for probably more than a year, and most of us have got a bit more hair probably, or maybe a few more pounds than we did a year ago. I feel we have worked well. I feel that a lot of the things that has happened over the year has been because of cross-party support. Maybe the pandemic kept us apart but brought us closer together. And you know, we all want to get back around the table. We all want to get back in the council chamber and have a glass of wine after the meeting and a few cakes and what have you. But you know, I'd like to again thank every councillor who was taken on community leadership roles this year. A lot of people have made a lot of differences, and our residents have been well looked after by our councillors. And I think, you know, we all deserve a round of applause and a slap on the back for that. So yes, I'm happy to accept the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peacock. Is there anyone else wishing to speak before we go to the vote?
Councillor Goff.
Councillor Goff, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank Councillor Lloyd mentioning the community hub at Chatham Court. I popped over there today, and they put 2 new doors, a fire door with a ramp and another entrance. So I'm grateful for the investment at Chatham Court in the last few months, and I'm grateful for the support of Terry Bailey, who's helping with the scheme. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. Councillor Girling?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. You won't hear me say this very often, but I agree with Councillor Peacock. I think councillors have worked well together. I think he's right in terms of being apart has probably brought us closer together. You know, when you have adversity, petty stuff gets put out of the way, and you just get on and deal with what needs to be done. So I echo what he said there, absolutely. I think from what the leader said in his speech in terms of what we've done over the year, I'd just like to sort of reiterate the fact that it's been district wide, and I think that's something that I'm particularly proud of. It's not just been Newark. We've got some good councillors that are saying what they want in the areas where they represent, and we're doing our best to deliver those services or what it is they want, and that's something that we should all be proud of. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Girling. Councillor Lloyd, would you like to sum up and finish?
I'm still stultified into silence at Councillor Peacock's very kind remarks,
Very
which
much. We'll get to vote.
I warmly receive. Thank you, Paul. I think there's nothing further to add. Chairman, move to the vote if we may.
Thank you very much. Then we will go to the vote. It will be a recorded vote, and I will ask the clerk to call out the names, please.
Councillor Arnold.
For.
Councillor Blaney.
For.
Councillor Brailsford.
For.
Councillor Brazier.
For.
Councillor Brock.
For.
Councillor Brooks.
For.
Councillor Irene Brown, are you on the call?
Can I speak for Irene? During David's speech, Irene sent me a text message. She hasn't been able to dial in. So she hasn't sent her apologies, but she did try. So she's not here.
Thank you, Mr. Dawn. Councillor Michael Brown, are you on the call?
For.
Councillor Carlton.
For.
Councillor Cope.
For.
Councillor Peterborough.
For.
Chairman.
For.
Councillor Cumberledge.
For.
Councillor Dawn.
For.
Councillor Dales.
For.
Councillor Dobson.
For.
Councillor Girling.
For.
Councillor Goff.
For.
Councillor Harris.
For.
Councillor Holloway.
For.
Councillor Hurst.
For.
Councillor Jackson.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
For.
Councillor Lee.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Michael.
For.
Councillor Myden.
For.
Councillor Mitchell.
For.
Councillor Peacock.
For.
Councillor Rainbow.
For.
Councillor Saddington.
For.
Councillor Skinner.
For.
Councillor Ivor Walker,
4,
Councillor Keith Walker,
4,
Councillor White,
4,
and Councillor Woodhead.
4.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you very much, fellow councillors. That was unanimous. We'll now go on to agenda item 10, the medium-term financial plan. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, another excellent document full of detail, so the further commendations to the team. Big shout out to Sanjeev, I know he enjoys them. This is a very effective document. What we just received was the in-year spend, if you like, but this document proves that the council is thinking ahead. And that's quite important. There is detail within that document on our what people call core spending power. But as we all know, the contributions from governments through RSG, as it's called, through to councils have been reducing year on year. We're increasingly moving towards being self-sustaining. So the transparency in this document is excellent to any that choose to read that, not just in terms of our own situation with regard to funding and how we're meeting that, but actually forecasting still some deficits in future years that we've planned for and either are now using reserves to cover that bridge, or showing again how we're planning to meet those in future through our own housing development company and other means and efficiencies. So again, that demonstration, I hope, of a financially sound council that does plan effectively for the future, forever looking to minimise the impact of change upon our residents. Without that document, Chairman, we couldn't deliver that budget and those services and all we aspire to do going forward, as we'll find on further documents. I don't intend to go into any further detail, Chairman, so if I may please move the recommendations at item 8 on page 26.
Indeed, Councillor Lloyd. Does anyone else wish to speak? Sorry. Oh, sorry, do we have a seconder? Councillor Girling?
I second that report and reserve the right to speak, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dobson.
Thank you, Chairman. Could I turn you to page 34? I don't know whether it's Councillor Lloyd that would like to answer this, or perhaps Sanjeev himself. I'm looking at the new homes bonus. Bearing in mind, we've built round what we knew at the time, obviously. And this last, not this week, but last week, I got information, as I'm sure we all did, that there was going to be a big change in the organisation that's actually running the new homes bonus. Does that, what in the table that's in front of us for 21-22 and on to 23, no, all the way for 21-22, is that correct, or is that just purely what happened last year up to the budget, and will it change halfway through? Because I'd like to know if we could, because I see that we don't ring fence it, and that concerns me a little bit. I know we can use the funds for revenue or capital, but I really do wonder whether perhaps somewhere along the line, if there's going to be changes, I think at the top, and it's going to be run in a different way, I wonder whether we perhaps should seriously, or you should seriously consider ring fencing some of that money. Thank you, Chairman.
Dobson. Councillor Lloyd or Mr. Coley, who's answering?
I'm happy to seek to answer, Chairman, and if Mr. Coley wishes to nudge you in any way that he may have better detail than myself, but by all means add to that. You're quite right, Councillor Dobson. The government is going to consult on either new homes bonus and or something to replace it. It's a curious system, always has been. The projections therein should occur because new homes bonus, if you like, is a slight legacy payment because it's a delivery on what has occurred. So if you like, there's something about honouring the housing that has been delivered in previous years and that carrying forward, which is why in those future years of the table you see it's blank because quite frankly, we don't know whether it will be sustained or what will replace it. I'm sure the government will want to incentivise home building in some way, whether that's to us or home builders, we don't know, or indeed those purchasing. So again, you're absolutely right there, Councillor Dobson. When this was introduced, a number of councils across the country used it to cross-subsidise other difficult choices at the time, not least the Council Tax Support Scheme. We didn't. And so the funds that have been generated from it, we have been able to apply and or put into reserves for different schemes, hopefully with a link towards infrastructure, economy and development in some way. And so to an extent, albeit we haven't sort of ring-fenced it for a specific project, they've been ring-fenced as a receipt that we can then choose to apply with some discretion. So we've never fully factored them in that sense into a constant of our revenue funding each year, with the exception of perhaps applying some of those reserves that have been generated to the deficits over different years. So it's a concern that it's money that may not come forward, but in terms of medium-term planning, we have reflected that it might not occur. I'm sure Mr. Coley will add to that, either if I'm wrong or if he wishes to add any detail to that.
Mr. Coley, would you like to say anything?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you for that. The leaders basically captured quite eloquently the new homes bonus. I think the key message for this council is we haven't been reliant on the new homes bonus to subsidise our general fund budgets. Other councils have, and clearly they're going to have some difficulties going forward. We don't know what the outcome of the consultation is going to be, but the table in the report is, as we know the information at the moment, that those are all the legacy payments that will be coming our way, regardless of what the consultation throws out. And there's expectations that new homes bonus will be replaced by some other means of funding to encourage development. But the key message is we've used our new homes bonus to add to the reserves and then fund future projects and not to supplement our general fund budget. And therefore the impact on us is not going to be as great as other councils. There will be an impact, but the impact will be on our capital programme, not on our revenue budget. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Coley. Councillor Blaney?
Can I just come back?
Thank you, Chairman. In fact, I was going to make the points that the leader made, so they've already been done, and given your comment at the outset of the meeting to keep responses brief, I will therefore leave it at that.
Chairman, might I just say one
Are
more?
there any other?
No? All right. Okay, Roger, I didn't know you were leader.
Maureen has come back.
She can't.
I can't.
Are there any other comments?
Are there any other comments? Councillor Girling, would you like to speak? No.
No, thank you, Chairman. I think enough's been said on it.
Thank you very much. We'll then go to the vote. Those in favour? Any against? One. I can only see one. Sorry? Sorry, Mrs. Dobson. Would you vote again?
No, I didn't vote against. I just didn't take my hand down quick enough.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. That then we are in favour of, and it is unanimous vote. Thank you very much indeed. I'll now go to agenda item 11, which is the capital programme. And again, Councillor Lloyd, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, thoroughly detailed.
She hadn't left me side.
Thoroughly detailed report showing therefore the capital that's been allocated. And again, similar to the previous report, there is the full list there of the application of capital, and bearing in mind it's not necessarily our own reserves or borrowing. Some of that is forecasting money that will come through us and be applied to different projects in some circumstances. So again, similar to the previous report that showed The full list of reserves, again, transparency on something that a lot of people do query on occasion. You know, flooding and democratic services, it's proper to have them, but also the application of those reading across into this, in particular with regard to our own housing stock, but very many other schemes, again, demonstrating the quantum of investment that will be applied to improvements to existing facilities, new and shared projects with others, including significant infrastructure. So I believe the detail is there, Chairman, again backed up by previous reports, and again further thanks to the officers for pulling this together for us. The recommendations are at section 4 on page 44. So moved, Chairman.
Councillor Lloyd. Councillor Girling.
Yeah, second report, Chairman, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
Councillor Dobson.
Councillor Dobson.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I think sometimes I think we need to just perhaps be a little bit more explicit. Having said that, I think the papers are excellent, but that's because we all understand them. Can I take you to page 45, first page of the appendix 1? And in the scheme names, I think it would be quite beneficial for any member of the public reading this online, having a hard copy, whatever, if we explained a little bit more. For instance, can I just say, under the York Drive Regeneration and Community Facility, it says revenue contribution. Can we spell out that it's the HRA? I think it would be fair. Unless, of course, I've got that wrong. Can I also say on the Southern Link Road contribution, external grant supplemented by revenue contribution, is that coming out of our reserves, or where is it coming from? The A1 Overbridge Community Infrastructure Levy, I know that the villages and certainly the smaller areas of our district where they've had development have had the benefit of the SIL, and they've got pockets of money now in some of the parishes where they will be spending it on infrastructure. And I suppose one could say that the development, God forbid it ever gets finished, down at Balderton would be absolutely wonderful. And I suppose it's that development that will be paying for the overbridge. I don't know, but that's something that perhaps it would be good. Other than that, does our Balderton parish happy with that? Are Fernwood happy with that? Or are they still getting a slight cut out of it? I just feel that the rest I understand, and I think everybody else will understand. It says quite clearly, borrowing, 2 million town fund with the remainder supplemented by borrowing. That's all self-explanatory. I just feel that those one or two need a little bit more explanation for the benefit of openness. Chairman, thank you.
Councillor Dobson, do we have any more comments? No? There is a hand up there. I don't know whose it is. Okay, it might be Sanjeev. Thank you. Councillor Lloyd, would you like to sum up?
The hand, Chairman, is Councillor Peacock.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah.
Is it okay if I come in, Chair? Chair, is it okay if I come in?
Peacock, yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention the capital programme because the policy and finance, those members who are on policy and finance, they'll know that I abstained on the vote because basically I didn't know too much about the Stodman Street development. Since then, I've had a presentation and it's a good scheme, and I'm happy to support the capital programme and support the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peacock. Are there any more comments? Thank you very much. We'll then go to the vote. All those in favour? Thank you. Are there any against? I can't see anyone. If there's anyone against, please shout up. Otherwise, I'll call the vote unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Agenda item number 12, Capital Strategy 21-22. Councillor Mrs. Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the capital strategy for 2021-22, which incorporates the minimum revenue provisions policy and the capital prudential indicators, updated in accordance with the latest guidance. This capital strategy gives a high-level overview of how capital expenditure, capital financing and treasury management activity contribute to the provision of local public services, along with an overview of how associated risk is managed and the implications for future financial sustainability, as well as detailing the approved capital programme. It also sets out the Council's ambitions over the medium to longer term. A copy of the capital strategy can be found in the appendices, pages 56 to 71. The report also seeks approval for the Council's minimum revenue provisions policy at Appendix C, which sets out how the Council will pay for capital assets through revenue each year. At 3.1 on page 55 is the summary of the capital programme. This provides the link back to the Treasury strategy. This is an overview of capital expenditure. It does not split between General Fund and HRA. It shows how the capital strategy and capital programme has the impact back to the Treasury strategy in terms of the requirements for cash flows. So, Chairman, I would propose to the Council approval of the recommendations on page 55 for A, the capital strategy for 2021-22, B, the capital prudential indicators and limits for 21-22 contained within Appendix A to the report, and C, the minimum revenue provisions policy statement as contained within Appendix C to the report, which sets out the Council's policy on MRP, and D, the flexible use of capital receipts strategy as contained within Appendix D to the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mrs. Michael. Councillor Mrs. Brooks, would you like to second?
Yes, Chairman, second the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Michael will no doubt be aware that I raised the issue of local bonds last year, and I'm very disappointed that further progress on this hasn't made, particularly as there is now a group of councils that have actually established their own municipal bonds. I point out that currently residents locally are getting 0.01% interest on long-term loans to saving institutions, but the municipal bond is providing a significant improvement on this, and it is secure as it is guaranteed against local government income, like we've just voted on earlier on. I cannot understand why we don't support our local residents with a higher interest rate than 0.01%, given that we have the capacity to do that. And not only that, but there are also a group of councils who have actually set their own bonds up, which allows them to use the money locally. We've set up a lottery. A lottery, in my view, is not the way forward, but we should have bonds which are set against our own assets, given that our assets are secured against our precept. Very disappointed. Yet again, we haven't done anything about that.
Harris, Councillor Blaney.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Councillor Harris is right that long-term investments in the current environment generate a very small amount of interest. There are various ways in which councils have sought to improve the income from their resources. We, of course, took the decision to establish Arkwood as a development company, and I think Councillor Harris will note that the income being generated from Arkwood, from the capital that we've been using in Arkwood, is substantially higher than the return that one would get from a bond. And therefore, I think we've taken the right decision, and the benefits are there to be seen in the medium-term financial plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blaney. Are there any more comments? I see a hand, but I don't know who it is.
Sanjeev.
Sorry.
Sanjeev.
Sorry, Mr. Coley.
Chairman, thank you. With your permission, the issue of bonds has been considered, municipal bonds, and I think we have responded to this issue before, but I'm happy to respond again to Councillor Harris. This item was also brought to Audit and Accounts Committee, and we were advised by Link Treasurers, who are our independent advisors. There is an issue with having bonds and local bonds, in that there needs to be a minimum level of issuing of those bonds. And we just don't have the quantum in Newark in order to make a bond viable. The expenses of setting one up would far outweigh the benefits. We are looking at municipal bonds as a whole, and investing in those, and also borrowing from the Municipal Bond Agency. But to set one up just for our council and our authority would just not be viable. And that was the advice given by Link at Audit and Accounts Committee. Perhaps the chair of Audit and Accounts would recall that meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coley. Councillor Michael, do you wish to speak and then close?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I was going to say what Sanjeev had already said. When we spoke with Rob Baxter from our Treasury advisors, Link Assets, that was the information which they did give us, and that's why the council hasn't gone down that route. So I put forward the recommendations as stated.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Michael. All those in favour of the recommendation as stated? Do I have any against? Councillor Harris, thank you. Any others against? Which I can't see. Thank you very much indeed. So 74, 1 against. I now go to
13.
No, 13. Sorry, agenda item 13, Treasury Management Strategy Statement. Councillor Mrs. Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the Treasury Management Strategy for 2021-22, which incorporates the borrowing strategy, the investment strategy and the Treasury prudential indicators, updated in accordance with the latest guidance. The Council is required to operate a balanced budget, ensuring that cash raised during the year will meet cash expenditure. Part of the Treasury management operation is to ensure that this cash flow is adequately planned, with cash being available when needed. Surplus monies are invested in low-risk counterparties. The Council's investment priorities being security first, portfolio liquidity second, and then yield. The summary of investments at 3.1 on page 74 states the Council is proposing to use the same limits and same prudential indicators for the investing activity for 21-22, details of which are in the appendices. The summary of borrowing at 4.3 on page 74 indicates that over the next 3-year period, there will potentially be a minimum requirement to borrow an additional £64 million. The Council has been in an under-borrowing position because it has had cashback reserves, and it is now catching up on previous under-borrowing positions, and cashback reserves are expected to be used. The Council has a high capital programme in terms of borrowing which needs financing. In Appendix A, page 77 to 78, shows the breakdown of the capital financial requirement of the General Fund and the HRA. The capital financing requirement on the HRA has been quite high. All borrowing previously had equates to actual loans the council currently have, and this table shows as the council pay them back what the impact is of going out to borrow. Details of the £64 million when borrowed is accounted for within the medium-term financial plan, which members have already seen this evening at agenda item 10. Before I propose the approval of the recommendation on page 75, I would just like to point out that 5A, the Treasury Management Strategy, it is for 2021-22 and not as 2020-21 as is printed. So that is a correction there. You are voting for the Treasury Management Strategy for 2021-22, incorporating the borrowing strategy and the annual investment strategy be approved, and 5B, the Treasury Prudential Indicators and Limits be approved, and 5C, the authorised limit Treasury Prudential Indicators be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Michael. Councillor Mrs. Brooke.
Second the recommendation, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chairman. On the previous paper, I raised the issue of bonds, and I think it was either a deliberate or a misunderstanding of what the Municipal Bond Organisation does. That the Municipal Bond Organisation, as I understand it, establishes the process and procedures by which local councils can issue bonds, and they then manage the process. So therefore, the whole issue of whether or not we have to do it is neither here nor there, because it can be done through the Municipal Bond Organisation. And frankly, you seem to be ignoring the fact that local residents are getting 0.01% interest, and you're prepared to dump them with that low interest rate, whereas and prepared to pay a higher interest rate to international and national banks. Frankly, I don't think that's a responsible position to take.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Anyone else wishing to speak? And I will call a vote on the recommendation of Councillor Mrs. Michael. Those in favour? Are there any against? Councillor Harris, thank you. Any others that I can't see against? Please say. No, thank you. Then that is carried with one against. Thank you. Item 15 is the pay policy statement. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chairman. Annual review of the statement and necessity in it to reflect the various policy statements this council has taken in the past, but also various negotiations and undertakings nationally and regionally, therefore put into action through this comprehensive document. So move, Chairman, the recommendation at 7 on page 112.
Sorry, Councillor Lloyd, I do apologise. I've missed the investment strategy out. Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the investment strategy for 2021-22. Whilst the Treasury strategy covers the Treasury investments, there are also non-Treasury investments, i.e. loans and shares, and this strategy ties up to make sure it is governed and there are limits and members are aware of what is happening. At 3.1 on page 102 shows the non-Treasury investments. The service investment loans balance is mainly Council's joint venture company, RHH, and a few growth investment loans. The service investment shares is 4 million in Arkwood and 500 in RHH. Details are in Appendix A on page 104 to 109. So, Chairman, I propose to Council the recommendations on page 103. 4A, the investment strategy for 21-22 be approved, and 4B, the investment prudential indicators and limits be approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Michael. I do apologise to you. Councillor Mrs. Brooke,
Second the recommendation, Chairman. Thank you.
do we have anyone wishing to speak? Thank you. Then I will go to the recommendation as proposed by Mrs. Michael. Those in favour? I can't see everyone. Is there anyone else wishing to vote against? In that case, I will call the vote unanimous. Thank you. Now, perhaps, Councillor Lloyd, we can go to a policy statement.
Thank you, Chairman. As the Council's champion, having signed the digital declaration, can I point out that people can either go online and rewind or watch again what it was I said last time in introducing the item. So move the recommendations, item 7 on page 112.
Thank you, Councillor Girling.
Yeah, I second the recommendation, Chairman, and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you very much. Anyone wishing to speak on this? I can't see any yellow hands. In that case, I will go direct. Sorry, Councillor Harris, did you want to speak? No, thank you. In that case, I will go directly to the vote. All those in favour? Are there any against? Are there any against that I can't see the hands up? Thank you very much indeed. In that case, I will call that vote unanimous. Item 16 is the Members' Allowances report of the Independent Remuneration Panel. Councillor Blaney.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Members are aware that the panel was set up to consider the basic allowance, special responsibility allowances of councillors going forward. The report of the panel was presented to a recent meeting of Councillors Commission, but it's for Council to consider the report and determine when it should be implemented. The view of the Councillors Commission was very much to accept the report and to thank the members of the panel for the work they had done. But we felt that the time may not be appropriate, not only because of the pandemic, but also because of the constraints on public sector pay, and also because, as members will have seen from the minutes of the Councillors Commission, the Chief Executive has been asked to bring forward before the end of April 2021 recommendations, options and conclusions on the work that's been done on the governance arrangements for the Council. So, Chairman, on that basis, I'd like to propose an amendment to the recommendation which reflects those comments, so that A, the Council thanks the members of the Independent Remuneration Panel for their report and approves the recommendations in full, but B, that in view of the ongoing pandemic, of the constraints on public sector pay, and of the report that the Chief Executive will be bringing forward before the end of April 21 on the Council's future governance arrangements, that it would not be appropriate to implement the changes at the current time. And I hope that finds favour across the Council, and I so move, Chairman.
Councillor Lloyd.
Second, and reserve my right to speak, please, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Lloyd. Do we have anyone wishing to speak? I can see a young
Maureen Dobson.
Sorry, Councillor Mrs. Dobson.
Sorry, well, thank you for that, Roger. I couldn't understand why it was even on the agenda for your Councillors Commission, but the fact that you've explained later on and the fact that it was in the document that the Chief Executive wanted to come forward with the governance, I can understand probably. But it really is quite crass of us even thinking about, albeit there might be members who are finding it difficult, and I accept that. At the end of the day, now is not the time to give us all a pat on the back yes, David's done that, and Paul Peacock, but to also give us a leg up on our expenses or our allowances. Now is not the time, ladies and gentlemen. I know, in particular, the leaders put an awful lot of effort into this, and the deputy, and I do appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I think it shouldn't even be considered. Let's look at what the chief executive brings back in April, but I certainly don't want to see this document in front of me for a whole year. I really do think it should be put back until 22. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Dobson. Are there any other comments?
Councillor Harris.
Sorry, Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Chair. I agree entirely with what Maureen Dobson has just said, and I hope that her comments are taken on board. I'd like to refer, because I was part of the Councillors Commission which originally looked at this, and one of the concerns I expressed at the time, not being a member of the Planning Committee, is how much time Planning Committee members spend on planning matters, and when site visits are restarted, that is likely to be even more time, frankly. And the independent folk said that there were other ways in which planning committee members could be supported. And I have to say their response in 3.4 is crass. And hopefully the governance review by the chief executive will address some of these issues, but I cannot see a way that response can be effected. The work of the planning committee is significant, it's regular and time consuming, and that is not reflected in the independent panels, remuneration panels response. And I really do think that they have not considered some of the issues there, and I do hope that when this is reviewed in a year's time, we can reconsider the whole process of planning committees memberships remuneration because of the amount of time and effort in which that they put in.
Sorry, I see a yellow hand. Oh, sorry. Is that
Councillor Peacock, if it's him?
Councillor Peacock, is that you?
It is I. Yeah, I agree. Agree with Councillor Blaney's addition to the recommendation. I agree that it should be delayed for 12 months. But I also, I also share the view regarding the planning committee. I think the report alludes to the fact that the planning committee or the scheme of delegation is going through a bit of a streamlining review, and I think that's what they alluded to when they talked about about reducing the number of applications and stuff like that. So I think it's useful that we do revisit this in a year, but I think particularly that aspect of the review needs looking at. The members of the planning committee do a really good job. They're committed. They spend an awful lot of time working on the planning committee, and I think that needs to be reflected in the remuneration for that as well. So I'm happy to support the amended recommendation, and I hope we can look at this in 12 months' time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Peacock. Councillor Walker.
Lawton.
Sorry, Councillor Lawton.
Thank you very much, Chairman. This is one of the anomalies of local government, that we have to agree and deal with our own remuneration through full council. They changed it down the central government, and no longer do they. It's all done independently, and I believe that should be the same process actually for local government. It's sort of a throwback from Tony Blair's days. And I think the sooner they change it, the better, because it pushes it in front of us councillors. And I think it's unfair for councillors to have to make that decision on their own remuneration. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second point is I agree over the planning committee issue, but successive remuneration panels. I made representation on 2 or 3 separate occasions to remuneration panels about the work that is carried out by members of the planning committee, and that they should receive recompense really for that length of time that they spend doing that. But it has been thrown out on every occasion. So I agree with Roger's change in the recommendations. I think it's eminently sensible. I've got one final point really for the chief executive. That the remuneration panel should really be done on a cyclic basis at the beginning of every administration as a matter of course, and then it is automatically done, and many other authorities do that. With that comment, I will be voting for this recommendation.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I totally agree with Councillor Lawson's suggestions and his remarks. The planning committee, on some of the occasions, have been there from 8 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes for some of the meetings are still there at 9, half 9 at night, still discussing planning applications. So that does need to be looked at in more detail and more remuneration for the planning committee itself. But yeah, I totally agree with the recommendations, and also with the not putting up the fees for councillors this year. Thank you.
Brown. Councillor Blaney, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I can't disagree with a single word that Councillor Harris has said. He was a member of the panel, as was Councillor Peacock, and the panel was unanimous in their concerns about the planning committee. We picked up on a comment of the independent remuneration panel. We went back to them, asking for them to put some flesh on the bones, if you like, and it isn't a particularly helpful response that we got, which is why we'll have further discussions and consideration about the matter at a future meeting of the Councillors' Commission. However, to Councillor Mrs. Dobson, can I almost pick up on what Councillor Lawton has said? It is a requirement under the local authorities, members' allowances, England regulations, for the council to have an independent remuneration panel to consider the allowances and special responsibility allowances paid to members. And one will note from paragraph 2.1 on page 128, this council set up such a panel in October of 2019, and therefore it is absolutely right that that panel, having met, having presented their report, that it should be coming to this council for determination. And that's precisely what we're doing this evening. And I hope that the recommendation that I've tabled is one that recognises that now is not the appropriate time for the reasons I set out, but we have to accept that report as is set out in those regulations. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Blaney. May I take a vote now, please? All those in favour of Councillor Blaney's proposition, please show. Thank you. Are there any against? Are there any against that I can't see faces? Sorry, Councillor Dobson, thank you. Right. Thank you very much. That vote then is passed with 1 against. Okay. 17. Next item on the agenda is item 17, the appointment of an independent member of the Audit and Accounts Committee. Councillor Mrs. Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this report is to seek approval from Council to appoint an independent member on a non-voting basis onto the Audit and Accounts Committee. At the meeting on the 27th November 2019, the results of the self-assessment exercise highlighted an action in relation to the consideration of including at least 1 independent member to the Audit and Accounts Committee. At the 5th of February 2020 Audit and Accounts meeting, A report tabled regarding the appointment after debate saw the committee agreed not to have an independent member. Post this, a review conducted by Sir Tony Redmond on the arrangements in place to support the transparency and quality of local authority financial reporting and external audit was commissioned. A recommendation from this report was that consideration to the appointment of at least one independent member suitably qualified by local authority audit committees was conducted. At the 25th of November 2020 Audit and Accounts meeting, a report was tabled by the Business Manager Financial Services on the recommendations produced by Sir Tony Redmond. From this, a vote was taken to review this decision taken on the 5th of February, and the report was tabled at the next Audit and Accounts Committee meeting on the 3rd of February 2021. At the 3rd of February Audit and Accounts meeting, members debated this report and agreed unanimously to recommend to full council to co-opt an independent member onto the Audit and Accounts Committee, to delegate to the Business Manager Financial Services, and in consultation with the Chair of the Audit and Accounts Committee, the process for selecting and recommending an appropriate candidate, and for a report to be brought back to full council to approve the appointment of the recommended candidates. Appendix B on page 145 contains the proposed role profile for the independent member. Should council approve the recommendations, a recruitment panel comprising of the Chair of the Audit and Accounts Committee, the Business Manager Financial Services, and a further member from the Audit and Accounts Committee would be convened in order to progress the recruitment of the independent member. Once the recruitment process has been concluded, a further report would be brought back to council in order to approve the appointment of the recommended candidate. The proposed remuneration of £500 with an allowance of £500 for reasonable expenses has been added to the proposed revenue budget elsewhere on this agenda in order to fund the co-opted independent member should the recommendation be approved. So, Chairman, I propose the recommendation on page 140, 5A, that the Council approve the creation of a co-opted independent member on a non-voting basis onto the Audit and Accounts Committee, and B, the process for selecting and recommending an appropriate candidate be delegated to the Business Manager Financial Services in consultation with the Chairman of the Audit and Accounts Committee, and that a report is brought back to the Council to approve the appointment of the recommended candidate. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Michael. Councillor Mrs. Brooke.
Yes, second the recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone wishing to speak? No yellow hands. Those in favour? Those against? I can't see any hands. Is there anybody who is not actually on the screen who wishes to vote against? And I will call the vote unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Item 18 on the agenda is notice of motion. I have none notified. Item 19 is minutes for noting. Please keep your questions short, and please no statements, only questions. First one is agenda item 19A, policy and finance. Councillor Lloyd.
Thank you, Chairman. It's with pleasure I present the minutes of the Policy and Finance Committee held on the 22nd of February, pages 148 through to 152, majority of which I suspect we've covered this evening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lloyd. Page 148, 149, 150, 151, 152, 153, agenda left blank. Thank you. Agenda item 19B, Planning Committee of the 2nd of Feb 2021. Councillor Blaney.
Thank you, Chairman. I have pleasure in presenting the minutes of the Planning Committee held on the 2nd of February, pages 154 to 156.
Thank you, Councillor Blaney. Page 1454, 156, sorry, 155, 156. Thank you very much, Councillor Blaney. Agenda item 19C, Audit and Accounts Committee held on the 3rd of February 2021. Councillor Mrs. Michael.
Thank you, Chairman. I have pleasure in presenting the minutes of the meeting held remotely of the Audit and Accounts Committee on the 3rd of February 2021, pages 157 to 161.
Thank you very much. 157, 158, 159, 160, 161. Thank you very much, councillors. Agenda item 19D, Councillors Commission 25th of Feb 2021, Councillor Blaney.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Last but not least, I have pleasure in presenting the minutes of the Councillors Commission held on the 25th of February, pages 162 through to 165.
Thank you very much. Page 162, 163, 164 and 165. No, thank you very much. Thank you for your attendance, ladies and gentlemen. It's difficult, I know, being in the situation we are, but I thank you all for being here with us and giving your input to the committee. Thank you very much, and I call the meeting closed.
Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.
Thank
Thank
you,
you. Good night,
Chairman.
everybody.
Good night all. Bye.
Bye.